we'll take a look at some of the games that are on upset alert this week, week 4 in the FCS. What a matchup we have here as the McNeese State Cowboys travel to Provo, Utah to face the BYU Cougars, who are coming off of an upset over Wisconsin. For the Cowboys to have a shot in this ball game, which they most certainly do, their offensive drives have to pay off with points. We've seen McNeese go through bouts of inconsistent offense during a game, and that can't happen this week against BYU. This game will come down to trench warfare and whether or not the Cowboys can do enough to disrupt BYU's offense and get stops defensively. I believe they'll be game, but I do like BYU to win this one. The Maine Black Bears travel to Central Michigan in a game in which the Black Bears are coming off of a bye week and are also coming off of an upset victory over Western Kentucky. Defense has been their calling card all season long, in addition to their effective, productive play on offense. Head coach Joe Harasmiak has his guys playing outstanding right now, and where they've been best has been inside the red zone. No red zone opportunities by opposing offenses, and they are also getting to the quarterback really well. I like them to win this ball game in convincing fashion. This team is playing well, and they are coming in with 2 weeks of prep. They'll move on to 3-0 after this one.
Well, the FCS creates so many opportunities for young men. And it's, I think, and you look in our league, it's really the best. It's the best combination of winning football, but also outstanding student athletes. That's really the true model here. And a lot of the FCS programs feel the same way. And, we're blessed to be where we're at here at Lehigh, and everybody else in this league feels the same way. But the FCS, you'll see a lot of people that aren't coming necessarily to the NFL, but what they are is they're becoming leaders of industry, whatever they do when they graduate. And that's really the most important piece of going to college and playing college football, is to getting that degree. And our guys really excel in that response.
Who knew that in the preseason that the Davidson versus Dayton game would be must-see TV, but here we are. Two explosive offenses will take the field in this one. We'll learn a lot about the Wildcats more after this contest. Davidson is 3-0 so far in the season behind first-year head coach Scott Abel, and they feasted off 2 Division II programs and 1 Division III school in which they scored 91 points against. Now, that's not to discredit the victories, especially coming from a program like Davidson that has struggled to find offense in recent years, but this is a definite step up in weight class. Dayton nearly pulled off the upset last week against Duquesne and had their opportunities to put the Dukes away. Both teams really struggle in stopping the run, so that's the biggest key in this game. I do like Dayton to win it. Davidson will keep it interesting, but I'll go with the more battle-tested squad in the Flyers. Last year, this game between Lehigh and Penn was a high-scoring, high-yardage affair. We'll see what this year's edition has in store as they meet up in Philadelphia at historic Franklin Field. Lehigh's offense has been the story this season, and not for the usual reasons. The Mountain Hawks' passing game has sputtered out of the gate, which really limited their on-field success so far this year. Penn opened up last week with an impressive victory over Bucknell. Last season, running back Carrican Brooks ran for nearly 300 yards against the Mountain Hawks, and we will be treated to 2 excellent tailbacks in this ballgame, as the Mountain Hawks' Don Bragalone is one of the best in the country. If Lehigh's passing game can catch fire, it'll make this one very interesting, but I see Penn's defense, fresh off of a 10-sack performance, having success in slowing down Lehigh. We have a big matchup in the SWAC in an East versus West battle as Alabama State and Grambling meet up. This is a bit of a crossroads game for both teams as they kick off conference play. Both teams are still trying to find their way offensively so far this season. They've really struggled on that side of the ball. Grambling's offensive struggles have been the most shocking. The Tigers haven't thrown a touchdown pass so far this season, which is a far cry from what we've been accustomed to seeing from the last 2 to 3 years coming from Grambling. The Hornets defensively have played well in spurts, but the offense has been inconsistent in sustaining drives. Expect both squads to pull out all of the stops in an attempt to get a leg up in conference play. I like Alabama State. Their offense, has shown some life early on, and I think they'll put together enough on that side of the ball to get the win. The Tribe coming to this matchup against James Madison, having not played a game in 2 weeks due to Hurricane Florence. The biggest challenge for them will come offensively. Can quarterback Sean Mitchell and the Tribe passing game be consistent enough to keep the Duke's defense from loading up against their ground game? JMU is coming off of a rout of Robert Morris, and they seem to have found that same spark that we've seen from them the last 2 seasons. I don't think they'll have a letdown here versus the Tribe. I like James Madison. The Idaho Vandals face their first Big Sky Conference game since they left the league for the FBS over 20 years ago, and what a first test as they face the UC Davis Aggies. It's going to be important for the Vandals to be able to find a way to sustain drives against this Aggie defense. Idaho hasn't had many red zone trips, but when they do get down there, they know how to punch it into the end zone with a touchdown. The key for them defensively will be matching up against the Aggies passing game, led by quarterback Jake Mayer and wide receiver Keelan Doss. The Aggies do a great job of using their passing game to set up their run game, and it has been highly effective this year. Now, UC Davis, in my opinion, will be too strong on both sides of the ball to avoid the letdown. I see them taking care of business and welcoming the Vandals back to the Big Sky. It's the Circle City Classic as the Howard Bison and Bethune Cookman Wildcats meet up in Indy. The Bison game last week against Savannah State was postponed due to Hurricane Florence, so they had a couple of weeks to get ready for the Wildcats. I think we're going to see an aerial display on both sides as Howard's Kalen Newton and Bethune Cookman's Arkevius Williams are 2 talented passers. The growth in Williams' game this year has been tremendous. Which team can run the ball and who can get to the quarterback will be key in this one. Huge game in the MEAC as everyone is trying to keep pace with North Carolina A&T to be in position to make a run for the Celebration Bowl in December on ABC. I like Bethune Cookman in this ball game. Defense is paramount in this matchup, and right now I can trust the Wildcats to be able to get some stops when needed. They'll be able to knock off the Bison in Indianapolis. Another big-time matchup on the Week 4 schedule is between 2 OVC foes in Southeast Missouri State and Eastern Kentucky. Quietly, the Red Hawks are off to an impressive 2-1 start to the season, and their tailback Marquise Terry is coming off of a 300-yard rushing day. His success speaks to not only his talent, but to the talent of the offensive line. That's where this game will have to be won if you're SEMO. The Colonels have one of the best pass rushers in the FCS in Aaron Patrick, who already has 3.5 sacks and 4.5 TFLs on the season. The Colonels kept things interesting last week against Bowling Green and also Marshall earlier in the year. Their run game and their ability to play style defense makes them a serious player in the Ohio Valley Conference this year. Tight end Dan Paul is their go-to guy inside the red zone and has their only 2 passing touchdowns on the year. This will be a nail-biter, but I'll go with the ball control and defense over offense. I like Eastern Kentucky. Last week's results set up a great matchup in Week 4 as Dartmouth travels to Holy Cross. The Big Green are fresh off of a big shutout 41-0 victory against Georgetown. The Big Green's defense was stellar all game long on both ends of defense and creating turnovers. This week, they're facing a Crusader offense led by quarterback Jeff Wade, who led his team to a comeback victory over Yale in overtime. In this game, I'm interested to see how the Big Green matches up in the secondary. Holy Cross does a great job of spreading the field, putting all eligible receivers in play, and as a result, puts a lot of strain on your defense and coverage. Dartmouth's offense is nothing to sneeze at as well. Running back Rashad Cooper and also Miles Smith formulate a potent 1-2 punch in the backfield. 2 seniors, by the way, 5'10", 215. Ultimately, it'll come down to the defense, and I think Holy Cross's ability to apply pressure within their front 7 will be the difference in this low-scoring, very physical game. Big-time matchup in the NEC between Sacred Heart and Wagner. This game is pivotal for both teams, including Duquesne and Bryant, as they are jockeying for what could be just one spot in the FCS playoff because of how good the league is so far this season. This is a must-win game for Wagner, in my opinion, as they're coming off of a tough loss to Montana State. The Seahawks are explosive on offense, but defensively, they continue to give up the big play. In this ball game, they'll mainly have to tighten up against the ground game of Sacred Heart. I really like the job that head coach Mark Nofri has done this year with the team. He rebuilt the front lines, and now they are bullying opponents along the line of scrimmage. Obviously, quarterback Kevin Duke has to be better throwing the football, but the Pioneers hang their hats and their legs on his ability to run the football, and I think you'll see their defense rise to the occasion and be able to put the Seahawks away in this one. Huge game in the CAA between Richmond and Stony Brook. The Spiders needed a last-second score to defeat St. Francis last week in a game that was moved up a couple of days because of Hurricane Florence. Now, the Spiders' passing game has proved to be as good as advertised. They really do a great job of attacking every level of the field, and in this game against Stony Brook is about tightening up versus the run and making quarterback Joe Carbone put the ball in the air more often than they would want to. Richmond has to win on first down defensively throughout the game. For Stony Brook, they don't mind playing a physical battle in the trenches. They are built for this type of battle. They do a lot of things really well offensively and defensively, and this week it's about playing contained defense and putting a ton of pressure on the Spiders' offensive line with creative stunts and blitzes. I think Stony is good enough defensively to win this one. I like the Seawolves in a close one. It's homecoming weekend in Fargo, North Dakota, as the North Dakota State Bison welcome in the Delaware Blue Hens. What a great matchup that features two of the FCS best defenses. With that being the backdrop, it's obvious that the offensive side of the ball will be the biggest focal point in this one. Who could have the success is the question. Can the Blue Hens do enough throwing the ball to complement their ground game? With Delaware probably putting extra emphasis on slowing down the Bison ground game, can quarterback Easton Stick answer the call in the passing game as well? Will be what this one will ultimately boil down to. I think Delaware pulls off the upset here. I like their secondary in this matchup and the fact that they're strong within their front seven. That'll put a lot of strain on the Bison offense, enough to which they'll get to be able to steal away a few possessions. Offensively, look for the Blue Hens to make enough plays on the perimeter to spoil homecoming for the Bison. Before we get to our stats FCS Game of the Week preview, here's where I'll be this upcoming weekend. Listen live on Shore Sports Network, 1160 AM or 1310 AM, or shoresportsnetwork.com, as I will be the color analyst for the Monmouth-Princeton game. That Saturday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Should be a great contest. Two outstanding coaches in Bob Cerise of Princeton and Kevin Callahan of Monmouth. Now it's time for our Stats FCS Game of the Week preview between the 17th ranked Sanford Bulldogs and the Chattanooga Mocs. Now let's take a look at some coaching points for both teams in this ball game. Starting with Sanford, quarterback Devlin Hodges has to protect the football. He's one of the best passers in the FCS, but those turnovers, more in particular those interceptions, come in inopportune time. And if he can protect the football, Sanford is going to be fine. And also with that same breath, they have to make it a Hodges versus Nick Tiano game, which means you have to find a way to stop the running game of Chattanooga, make them one-dimensional, because if they get into a passing game against Sanford, to me, that heavily favors the Sanford Bulldogs. And defensively, they have to find ways to get creative to generate pressure. They're doing a great job versus the run, playing behind the line of scrimmage, but right now that pass rush is just not getting home, and they have to find ways to disrupt the pocket of Nick Tiano and that Chattanooga passing attack. Moving over to the Mocs in this ball game, I look at the secondary, and they have to be able to communicate against the passing attack of Sanford. They do a great job of trying to push the tempo, push the pace. If your secondary has any issues in communication, it's going to be a touchdown, because you're facing not only one of the best passing attacks in the FCS, but one of the best receivers in Calvin McKnight. Third down defense for the Mocs will be key. They have to be able to get off the field against Sanford. If you give this Bulldogs offense more swings at the tree, they're going to have a ton of success. They're going to put up a lot of points. And in conclusion, it's about playing winning special teams. They've already given up a touchdown on kickoff returns this season. They can't allow Sanford to work with a half a field or a great field position. If they allow that to happen, they could find themselves on the losing end of the scoreboard. Let's take a look at some of the X factors in this ball game. Starting with Sanford, I look at defensive end Ahmad Gooden, one of the best pass rushers in the FCS. Senior Bowl watch list, preseason Buck Buchanan Award watch list. This is a guy that can live in the opponent's backfield, but right now he hasn't been able to do so on a consistent basis. They need him to play his A game against this Chattanooga Mocs passing attack. And when you look at the Mocs, I look at running back Tyrell Price. This guy has had a phenomenal season so far. 287 yards rushing, almost 5 yards a carry, and 5 rushing touchdowns. Now he's averaging 95 yards a game. And if they're going to win this contest against Sanford, they got to have the balance. Nick Tiano can't get out there and throw the football 35, 40 times a game. They need Tyrell Price to bring some balance to this offense, just like he has done so far this season. So he's going to be the biggest X factor in this ball game for Chattanooga. I like the Mocs in this contest. I just think right now they're playing well-balanced football. Their passing game is doing a great job of being a complement to their rushing attack. Defensively, they're turning the ball over. They're playing behind the line of scrimmage on defense against the run, and they are also getting after the quarterback. All of that, to me, looks like the more complete team in this ball game against the Bulldogs. Should be a great one, but I'm going with the Mocs. So that's it for this week's episode of the FCS Kickoff. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts, and be sure to check out and subscribe on iTunes to the Football Game Plan's FCS Opening Drive podcast, where David Hashagen and myself will keep you up to date to what's going on around the FCS.